What do you think, Walt? Are we gonna get banned today? Are we gonna get banned today, buddy? Is TikTok gonna censor us again, buddy? You just care about belly rubs. You don't care about censorship. You're lucky. You're lucky you're an American dog. You live in the safety of the empire, Walter. Understand that. I've seen some awful videos out of Gaza of people's pets being hit by the missiles, because, of course, everything's getting hit by the missiles. You can't carpet bomb a place and not hit people's pets. Hi, Walt. You coming over to say hello again? Look at this. Look at how he puts his hand on me. Pet me. Please. Well, what a slut. Walter is just a baby leftist. I just got him reading theory. He's reading Foundations of Leninism right now. Keep doing what you're doing. You're a great person. Thank you, comrade. Thank you. Thank you. I've heard so many kind words from Palestinians lately and Palestinian advocates, and it's like, man, what I do is nothing. You know, what I do is nothing. Like, I see the videos coming out of Gaza, and I feel like I have to speak out, you know? Versus, you know, Palestinian people, 75% of them live in refugee status because of the Nakba, because of the original Israeli mega seizure of land. And the following things, which some people have called the ongoing Nakba. Nakba means the calamity, by the way. That's what Palestinians call the seizure of land and the pushing of about 70% of Palestinians into refugee status. But anyways, you know, they're the ones living in refugee status, and then, you know, even the real heroes or the real great people are the people who are stuck in Gaza, who are literally born into an open-air prison in a situation where 97% of the water is undrinkable, a situation that the Israeli state itself calls unlivable, and they're stuck there. They're stuck there, and if they break out, if they rise up and they break out of their open-air prison or try and take back the land that was stolen from them, the media calls them terrorists. And anybody who stands for a liberated Palestine, they associate with terrorism. Meanwhile, over 700 Palestinian children have lost their lives this week because of Israel's missile strikes. How is that not terrorism? Right? What is your definition of terrorism? Is targeting civilians en masse not considered terrorism? Are Zionist war crimes acceptable simply because they're backed by the United States, who has the most pull at the UN? And what good is the UN when they, you know, say, yes, these are war crimes, yes, these are against humanitarian law, but then there's no effort made to hold Israel responsible. There's no effort made to, you know, break the Palestinians out of the open-air prison and apartheid conditions that they're living in. Without, you know, their only recourse is taking up arms and fighting back that way, but that results in these massive bombing campaigns against civilians, women, and children. So, why should we get involved? We shouldn't. But I've heard a lot of people saying that. You know, I've heard a lot of conservatives saying that, and it's pretty funny. These conservatives are like, yeah, I support Israel all the way. Everyone who supports Palestine is a terrorist and is part of Hamas. But I don't think the U.S. should get involved. I think the U.S. should be isolationist and focus on ourselves. Like, you guys, the U.S. is giving Israel over $3 billion a year. And all those Israeli missiles that they're launching at Palestinian women and children are coming from the U.S. and U.S. weapons manufacturers. And this has been the case since the mid-1960s. Prior to that, Israel was largely a product of the British and British oil companies. After that, the U.S. really took over funding. And, you know, we are largely the reason that groups like Hamas even exist. Why, you know, armed Palestinian resistance organizations exist because we funneled so many arms and so much funding into the apartheid state of Israel that's put Palestinians in such horrific living conditions. So then you have these conservatives who are like, yeah, I support Israel, but the U.S. shouldn't get involved. Buddy, the U.S. is already involved. We've been involved, bro. Our tax dollars are going straight into the hands of the IDF, and it's been that way since the 1960s, so too late now. Too late now. Holy cow, we got a lot of people in here. Just so you all know, this account and my other account both have strikes from TikTok. TikTok is threatening to take them both down. So if you want to keep up with me and Midwestern Marx, follow us on Twitter/X. At Marx Midwest is our handle. And then please subscribe to our YouTube, Midwestern Marx. If you're worried about censorship on those platforms, you can follow us on Rumble. They don't ban anything that we put up ever, so right on, brother. Woohoo! Why Marxism, though? Because Marxism is correct, because all of this stems from production, right? The mistake people make is thinking that this is a religious conflict between Muslims and Jews. And, I mean, the religion does play a role, for sure. Oh, thank you. But the real reason that the U.S. is backing Israel isn't because they hate Muslims and they like Jewish people, right? The U.S. was happy to funnel arms and money into Osama bin Laden's Mujahideen, a jihadist extremist group, when they were fighting against the Soviet Union, when they were fighting against the Marxist democratic government in Afghanistan, right? When Muslim groups go along with the U.S.'s interest, the U.S. is happy to work with them. They worked with ISIS and splinter groups of Al-Qaeda in Syria and Libya. They helped transport terrorists, extremist jihadist terrorists from Chad into Libya to destabilize the Libyan government. So the U.S. has nothing against Muslims. It's the fact that Israel protects the interests of Western multinational corporations. And Israel launches missiles at countries like Iran and Syria who go against the U.S.'s interests. And they help the U.S. carry out regime change operations against their enemies in the Middle East. It's essentially a neo-colonial outpost for the United States and U.S. finance capital and U.S. capitalists that exists in the Middle East and allows them to protect their interests. And it's always been a region, even dating back to the Roman Empire and previously, that large, powerful countries have tried to control because it's a center for trade and commerce and production. It's a very important area in the world, even before oil was discovered in the Middle East. Now it's even more important. But great empires have always tried to control that region, right? So that's what the U.S. is doing. It's not that they hate Muslim people and love Jewish people. It's that they love super exploiting the Middle East. They love having unlimited access to those resources, right? And that is what a Marxist analysis tells us. That's why I'm a Marxist. That's Marxism, right? These things stem from production. Yes, religion is used as a way to push people towards a certain ideology or push people towards certain positions. But ultimately, what the ruling class is after is more wealth. They're after more resources. They're after the accumulation of capital. And Israel allows the U.S. and other Western powers to protect their capital and exploitation in the Middle East. So they dump endless arms and funding into them. And the media is owned by the same people, right? The media is privately owned. It's owned by business interests. They're largely have to follow the interests of their advertisers, who are also multinational corporations and businesses. So they'll justify anything that Israel does because Israel protects their interests in the Middle East. We have so many people in here. Please, before I get banned on TikTok, the last time I went live, I got banned after like 10 minutes, and there's a strike on my account right now. Please subscribe to youtube.com/MidwesternMarx and follow Midwestern Marx on X, on Twitter. People's Republic of Jerusalem, no. Or maybe. If you just mean like a dictatorship of the proletariat, then I'm for it. I don't think it should be called People's Republic of Jerusalem, though, but whatever. Arabic Lovin', what's up, man? How's it going? What do you think about the two-state solution? I think the two-state solution is ridiculous. right? You need a one-state solution, a dictatorship of the proletariat, like I said, a worker state, a state controlled by workers of all races, all religions, all ethnicities. But the reason people need to understand, the reason that Gaza is an open-air prison, the reason why Israelis keep Palestinians blockaded in, is because if they didn't, the population would be more Palestinian than it would be Israeli. And if they gave equal political rights to people in the occupied West Bank territories, the same thing would happen. There would be more Palestinian voters than there would be Israeli voters. So what happens then? Well, the apartheid state of Israel ceases to exist, right? You no longer have an apartheid state that systematically deprives Arabs of their rights and keeps them trapped in an open-air prison while providing, benefits to Jewish citizens. Instead, you would have a multicultural, multi-ethnic, multi-religious state. And that is not what the Zionist project is. That's not what the Zionists want. They want an apartheid state in a sort of constant state of war with Arab populations in the region. And that's why, that's what the U.S. wants too. Who's the largest funder and supporter propping up Israel. So, oh my gosh, we have so many people in here. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, Midwestern Marx, before I get banned. For those who don't know, this is my 8th TikTok account. Okay, I had to make 8 TikTok accounts because they keep banning me. Because every time there's something going down in the world and I speak out about it, I seem to get censored and taken down and have tens of thousands of followers who can no longer find me. So, youtube.com/MidwesternMarx and Twitter @MidwesternMarx and Instagram and everywhere. Really don't see the difference in what's happening now to the Holocaust. Yeah, that's what's so interesting about it too, right? Because Zionism got really popular when anti-Semitism was really big in Europe. So you have anti-Semitism and obviously the extermination of Jewish people that's going on. And then you have this ideology called Zionism that forms, where people are like, Jewish people need a state to protect themselves. They need a place where they can go and be protected from anti-Semitism. So then you have the Zionist project that starts in these settlements, these Jewish settlements that begin populating Palestine. And after World War II ends, Britain really starts heavily sponsoring this and pumping money into it, and you have Zionism really take off. So Zionism takes off in response to massive anti-Semitism, massive anti-Jewish sentiment. And this is why it's really, really important, when you're advocating for Palestine, do not be anti-Semitic. There's no reason to be, right? Anti-Semitism helped fuel the Zionism that we're against. And it makes it really easy for people to demonize Palestine when you're anti-Semitic. Your live is flagged for misinformation. This is all true. I just got a message from TikTok that said your live is flagged for misinformation. Nothing I'm saying is misinformation right now. Holy crap. For those who don't know, this app, look up Mint Press News, TikTok, and NATO. After this app, their American servers were taken over by a company in Texas called Oracle, and they hired a bunch of NATO operatives and U.S. national security agents who wiped out all the socialist accounts, and that's why I can't even go live anymore without getting pulled down. So please, please, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, Midwestern Marx. We do multiple streams a week, and they've never taken us down for pseudo-misinformation, but... What was I talking about? Zionism as a response to anti-Semitism. Yeah, so then these settlements start taking off, and the colonial attitude of the Zionist settlers and the Zionist ideology just got worse and worse and worse over time, to the point where they're now keeping Palestinians in Gaza in open-air prison and just indiscriminately launching missiles at them. And then saying, no, they're all Hamas. They're all Hamas. We should just be allowed to just fire missiles at all Arab people in the region because Hamas. So Zionism in itself has transformed to the evil, heinous ideology, the far-right extremist ideology that was spurned by anti-Semitism in Europe in the 1940s. I have to be really... Oh, thank you. Oh, a galaxy. Woo! I have to be really careful about how I say that. I could say it in a more concise way, in an easier to understand way, but there are certain words that are banned on TikTok. But Zionism is the far-right extremist ideology that starts with an F, that was really popular in Germany in the 1930s and 40s. It's the same thing, even though that anti-Semitism in Germany is what helped spawn Zionism. It's really quite interesting. Conflating anti-Zionism to anti-Semitism is anti-Semitic itself. Palestinians are Semites too. Absolutely. Absolutely. To say that, to be a Semitic person or to be Jewish, you have to support the apartheid state of Israel is absurd and offensive to the many, many Jewish people and Semitic people who do not support the U.S.-backed apartheid state of Israel, of which there are many. Thank you for all the stickers or whatever you call them on here. I'm not used to going live on TikTok. Usually I just get banned right away. Spinning black. We turning Gaza into Zaza. I almost appreciate that the Zionists all live privileged lives where they have access to electricity constantly and they can post on social media all the time. Because, that's what helped turn me into a Palestinian advocate. I just talked to the Zionists, and I was like, oh my gosh, you guys are psychotic. The way you guys talk about Arab people is disgusting and racist. I do not support you. I actually Zoom chatted with some IDF soldiers, and it didn't take long before they were saying all Arab people are terrorists, and justifying any and all attacks against them, and saying that Israel and the Zionist state could do no wrong. And I was like, oh, wow, I side with the Palestinians even more. So, keep making asses of yourselves, Zionists. It's helping us. Lots of Palestinian flags in the chat. Woo! Arabs can be Zionists too. Also true. Yes, also true. More power to you, bro. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, OMG. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for speaking up for underdog people. Absolutely. If anybody, if people want, maybe one of the things I should be doing more on this channel is giving people resources to learn more, because obviously there's only so much you can learn from TikToks. But if people watch Abby Martin's Gaza Fights for Freedom, where she just goes and not only talks to Palestinians, but talks to Zionist Israelis, watch that movie. It really sums up the conflict, and it makes it hard not to speak up, right? And that's just one resource, but if you look into this conflict at all, if you learn anything about the plight of the Palestinian people, and the U.S.'s role in backing up the Zionist apartheid project, it's impossible not to speak up, right? How could you not stand up for these people? I grew up learning my whole life. My entire life, I was in an evangelical Christian family. I had relatives who were pastors in the evangelical church. And they said, you have to support Israel. This is what the evangelical religion says in the U.S. You have got to support Israel because it's part of the end times prophecy. So God says that we always have to support this Israeli state. And once, people go against Israel, it's a sign of the rapture and a sign of the end times and the end times prophecy. I don't get it completely, but I was told my entire life that you have to support Israel because it's what God wants, right? So I had all this family pressure and all this religious pressure and social pressure to embrace the apartheid state of Israel, which is what Louis Althusser would call the ideological state apparatuses, the way that society conditions us and gets us to think a certain way. I had all of those pushing me to side with Israel. Then I watched Gaza Fights for Freedom, and I just read a little bit about Palestine and Israel and spoke to some IDF soldiers on Zoom, and I was like, fucking right, there's no way I support Israel. There is no way you can convince me that this is what God wants. Israel has unalived over 700 Palestinian children in the past week. You think I should support that because of God? If there is a God, there is no way he supports the massacre of Palestinian children. Okay? If it is, that's a God that I don't want to worship. So, I mean, all you have to do is research the situation and you'll be on the side of Palestine. I'm serious. And celebrities like Justin Bieber and Jamie Lee Curtis and all these goofballs who have been posting pray for Israel over pictures of Palestinian suffering and over pictures of Gaza destroyed, have done the bare minimum research, and now they're trying to jump on the next hot button issue and win themselves some free fans. And in the process, they're making asses of themselves and exposing the state of Israel for what it is. Whoa, 900 people in here. Thank you, everybody. Free Palestine. Free Palestine from the river to the sea. Palestine will be free. Israel is an apartheid state that gets $3 billion a year from the United States, gets state-of-the-art weaponry from the United States, while the Palestinian resistance is literally using jerry-rigged fireworks to defend themselves. 1,000 people now know that. I'm sure a lot of you already knew that, but thanks. TikTok already threatened to take down my account and take down my live. So to keep up with us, to keep up with me and Midwestern Marx, please follow us on YouTube. Subscribe to our YouTube. We stream multiple times a week. And follow us on X/Twitter at Midwestern Marx. Actually, our Twitter is Marx Midwest. But holy cow, 1.1 thousand. There's so many people in here. I love you. Thank you. I love you too. I love all the people standing up for Palestine right now. And they're trying to suppress us. Right? France was moving to make standing up for Palestine illegal, trying to conflate standing up for Palestine with standing up for terrorism. They were shooting water cannons and beating protesters back, trying to suppress them, trying to do anything they can to silence the truth. Anything they can. In the UK, there were videos of police ripping Palestinian flags away from protesters. They're suppressing and beating down anybody who speaks out against the Zionist apartheid regime. And that should tell you everything you need to know about the Western imperialist countries that call themselves liberal democracies. They're liberal democracies that'll beat you if you speak out against apartheid. Also, Karine Jean-Pierre, White House press secretary, Biden press secretary, coming out and saying that anybody calling for a ceasefire, the progressive Americans calling for a ceasefire, are repugnant and disgraceful. Repugnant and disgraceful. She's not repugnant and disgraceful. Biden's not repugnant and disgraceful for shipping billions of dollars in weapons paid for by American taxpayer money to the apartheid state of Israel that they've used to massacre over 700 children. She's not repugnant and disgraceful. We are. We're repugnant and disgraceful because we want peace. I mean, really, what kind of country is this? What kind of clown politicians do we have? What kind of world do we live in where the people calling for peace get called repugnant and disgraceful by the media, whereas the people sponsoring apartheid and the mass murder of Palestinians aren't repugnant and disgraceful? They're considered upstanding people, the adults in the room, according to the media. I mean, these people, as Ali Abu Nima said, these people worship war. They worship death. They worship the death of the Palestinians. These people like Karine Jean-Pierre, who's so condescending towards anybody who offers any pushback towards the Biden administration. Calling peace activists repugnant and disgraceful. I mean, does that not tell you everything you need to know about the Biden administration, about the Democrats, about the U.S. government and the U.S. empire? That they say if you call for peace and an end to racist apartheid, that's backed by $3 billion in U.S. taxpayer money plus every year, you're repugnant and disgraceful. I mean, what a joke. What an absolute joke. But the people aren't buying it anymore. Look how many people are in this live. Look how many people are putting the Palestinian flag in the comments. Look how many people are showing up at these rallies. These rallies around the world, in New York, in the UK, in France, and other European countries. The streets of Baghdad, Iraq were insane. Very rarely have I seen that many people gathered in one place in my life. Right, all these Arab countries, they know what Israel is. They know it's a neo-colonial outpost of the U.S. They've had missiles launched at them by Israel, who protects the U.S.'s economic and geopolitical interests in West Asia, or what's often called the Middle East. Thank you for all the stickers, everybody. I can't even keep up with it. Thank you, thank you. Thank you for standing for Palestine. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Please. Although they said to be careful because the Palestinians are calling for global jihad. You know who's tried to revive jihad around the world? Who's really supported a global jihad? The United States. You know, there was a CIA document in I can't remember when, I believe like the 1970s or 60s, but it said hope lay in the Muslim revival. And what they saw was all these Arab countries and Muslim majority countries in West Asia and North Africa were moving towards the left. They were moving towards, no longer allowing Western multinational corporations to pillage their resources and abuse their people and exploit their labor. They said, we want to start taking our resources and using them to develop ourselves. And what the CIA said was, we can combat this in the Muslim world by dumping money, arms, support, and funding into right-wing jihadist extremist groups. Because those are the people who are opposed to the left-wing Muslims. So they started heavily funding and arming Osama bin Laden's Mujahideen, millions and millions and millions, billions of dollars, and which has tons of lasting effects to this day. There are splinter groups of the Mujahideen like Al-Qaeda, the East Turkestan Islamic movement, who are still committing heinous attacks. Right? Those are the kind of people calling for a global day of jihad or whatever. The people who were backed by the U.S. when it was convenient for us to do so. Hamas is just defending themselves because we've trapped them in a tiny open-air prison in one of the most densely populated places on Earth and perpetually launched missiles at them, which unalive thousands and thousands of children. Right? Hamas isn't fighting so they can come to America and start killing American citizens. Hamas is fighting for their lives. They're fighting because they're trapped in a damn open-air prison that we put them in. And then you have Americans like, oh, Hamas is going to come get us. Hamas is going to come get us. You know who came and got us? Al-Qaeda, the splinter group of Osama bin Laden's Mujahideen, who we dumped arms and money into when they were fighting the Soviets in Afghanistan. Those were the people who committed 9/11, the people in the Middle East who were being armed, funded, and propped up by the U.S., right? Not Hamas, not Palestinian resistance organizations. But Americans are so easily manipulated by this Islamophobic rhetoric, by this idea that all Arab people and all Muslim people are jihadists who want to come get us. No, a lot of them are extremely progressive. A lot of them are extremely what we would consider left-wing. And in order to counter that, we have dumped money and weapons into the extreme right. Hamas was funded by Israelis to oppose Arafat. I've heard that too. And it's important to recognize, it's Hamas now, but when the PLO, this secular left-wing organization, was the main Palestinian resistance organization, the propaganda was the same. Right? They were still calling it a terrorist group. They were still calling it a jihadist extremist group. Right? Even though it was a secular left-wing organization. And, the U.S. and Israel's suppression of that organization allowed Hamas to become the main organization, a sort of Muslim nationalist resistance group. So, no matter what way the Palestinians rose up and tried to fight back or tried to protect themselves from the apartheid, they would be smeared by the media and by the Zionists. Even if they tried to do it peacefully, which they did with what's called the Great March of Return, where they tried to just take back their land peacefully by walking onto it, and they were targeted by Israeli bombers and snipers. Oh, imagine that. It's almost like that's how Israel responds every single time. It's almost like they're systematically targeting Arab people and trying to expand Jewish settlements and enforce an apartheid state. Almost seems like that. So many people on this live. Thank you all so much. Solidarity, free Palestine. Israel is an apartheid state that gets $3 billion a year plus from the United States. Prior to any of this going down, prior to the Palestinian resistance fighters breaking out of Gaza and Israel launching their bombing campaign that's unalived over 700 children, prior to that, Israel was killing one Palestinian child per day on average. Right? So this is not something that just started, regardless of what the media would have you believe. This is a systematic apartheid and I don't know what words I'm allowed to say on TikTok, but an attempted cleansing of Palestinian Arab people in this region that's been going on for 70 years, and that's what the Palestinians are fighting back against. This isn't something that started this week. Despite what the media has to do to lie to you about these issues, is isolate them from the historical factors that created them. Not talk about, the expansion of Israel and the seizure of Palestinian land and the steady launching of missiles into Gaza indiscriminately into civilian areas. They cut all that out and just say, Hamas, 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 Israel must respond. Look what Hamas did, totally unprovoked, Israel must respond. That is the media narrative, and it's bullshit. Also, TikTok has already threatened to take down this live for misinformation. They've banned 7 of my accounts already, and they're threatening to ban my 2 current accounts. So if you want to keep up with us and the coverage that we're doing and the truth that we're telling, X/Twitter at Marx Midwest or Midwestern Marx, and then Midwestern Marx on YouTube as well. Please, please, please subscribe to our YouTube, Midwestern Marx. We do regular streams. We upload almost all of the TikToks, so if our account gets banned, which I'm sure it will eventually, they'll still be up on YouTube. And then if you're real worried about censorship, you can follow us on Rumble. Thank you for your support. We appreciate it. Keep it up. Thank you. Thank you for speaking the truth. You bet. Someone's got to do it. How do you respond when Hamas uses human shields? Actually, there are reports now that show that the IDF were hiding among the civilians during the Hamas attack. And one survivor from the Israeli settlement that Hamas seized said that IDF soldiers were shooting civilians themselves. That actually just came out. But that is what Israel always, always, always says. This is not a new talking point. This is what the Zionists always say. They launch a missile and blow up a hospital. They're like, oh, Hamas was there. Sorry, we took out 1 Palestinian child per day before this all started, and then 700 plus more after this started. The Hamas was using them as human shields. Our bad. There was a story that came out last year where there were 11 Palestinian children in their homes seeking trauma care, seeking therapy to try and recover from the last missile strike that they survived, where they watched their friends and their family pass away. And Israel hit them with missiles and killed 11 of them while they were getting therapy. Right? And the excuse even then was, oh, Hamas was using them as human shields. Dude, it was kids getting therapy. It was kids getting therapy to recover from the last missiles y'all launched at them. And you expect me to believe all of these kids, the 1 kid per day that you're massacring, they're all either Hamas or Hamas was using them as human shields? All 700 kids who you guys have taken out in the past few days are either Hamas affiliated or Hamas was using them as human shields? Nobody's buying this anymore, Zionists. Give it up. Nobody's buying this anymore. We've heard you guys say this for 70 years. We're done listening. We're done watching you take out 700 babies and then say, oh, they're all Hamas. No, they're not. You're lying. You're lying. That's all you have is lies. That's all you have is these same talking points. They're all Hamas. They're all Hamas. They're all Hamas. No, they're not. I'm not going to support baby murder because you say that the babies are part of Hamas. Give me a break. Nobody is. We're done with you. We're done listening to you. Nobody takes Zionists seriously anymore. Except for Robert F. Kennedy, apparently. Love the truth. Absolutely. Absolutely. You don't have to back down to these people and tuck your tail in between your legs and say, oh, I'm sorry for supporting Palestine so vocally. That's what the Zionists will try to make you do. That's what liberal YouTuber David Pakman is doing right now. Rather than talking about Israel's crimes, he's spending all his time blaming Hamas and finding a way to place blame on the Palestinians because he doesn't want to get scolded by Zionists. He doesn't want to get scolded by the liberal establishment and people like Karine Jean-Pierre who call us repugnant and disgusting for wanting peace. You don't have to listen to these people. It's not repugnant and disgusting to call for peace. Stand up for the right side of history. Stand up for the people who are being colonized and cleansed. Preach, you bet. You bet. Israel is the real terror. Yep. Yep. You're darn right. They love to play the victim. Yeah. And Another really good source that I recommend people check out is Al Jazeera's video on the Israeli lobby. Al Jazeera did an investigation into the Israeli lobby and how they influence different media groups, and they train people up in these talking points. So Al Jazeera's journalists went undercover with cameras and filmed the Israeli lobby members training people up on how to do these talking points. The same talking points you see Zionists putting in the comments right now. It's literally like word for word. It's hilarious. But they say, any time that people talk about Israel targeting civilians, you have to deflect it to Hamas. Oh, Hamas uses human shields. We had to hurt those civilians. And it always turns Israel into the victim, right? Israel's always the victim. They're not, an apartheid state that inherited the British mandate, the British colonization of Palestine, and continue to expand and enforce an apartheid on the Palestinian people and regularly launch missiles at civilians. Right? Israel's not the aggressor for doing that. They're always the victim. They're always under attack. They're always under assault from Iran and Syria and Palestine, all these countries who are coincidentally enemies of the U.S. and Western multinational corporations. They always turn Israel into the victim, and they train people in doing that. Right? They train people in listening to criticism of Israel and saying, oh, no. We had to kill 700 children. They attacked us first. But at this point, the crimes of Netanyahu and his extremist government are getting so unhinged that the Zionists are having a hard time lying to people anymore. Israel, their internal politics have been shifting far right for a long time now. Right, they've been moving right towards more extreme Zionism and more open anti-Arab sentiment with Netanyahu and literal psychos and like absolute far-right extremists like Naftali Bennett being allowed into the Israeli government, which, people have argued, and I agree with this, is the natural progression of an apartheid state, right? If you have a state that's existence is predicated on subjugating Arab people and keeping Arab people trapped in an open-air prison and trapped in an apartheid, then your politics are naturally going to shift to the right because you need far-right extremist F-word politics to justify that and justify something like that. So that's what's been happening in Israel. And now you have just these naked war criminals, these people like Netanyahu and the people around him who will say we're fighting human animals. We can cut off the water and electricity because the over 1 million children living in Gaza are human animals. Right? And the world sees this and they're like, what the hell? What the fuck is this? And really, this is what Israel, has been like for years. But now that you have all these far-right goofballs in power, all these open Zionist far-right extremists in power in Israel, they're sort of saying the quiet part out loud. Right? They're sort of showing people how disgusting and murderous and racist the state of Israel is and forgetting to kind of try and hide it. So that's another element of what's going on here, too. There are lots of reports from, good journalistic outlets like Consortium News and People's Dispatch that have been following the rightward shift in Israeli politics over the last few years. ISIS equals... Did that say Israel's secret intelligence service? Yeah, isn't that hilarious that Israel supported and backed and funded ISIS in Syria? And now they're trying to call Hamas the ISIS of the Middle East? Like, you're the ones working together with ISIS. If anyone's the ISIS of the Middle East, it's the Zionists. Free Palestine. Yes, Israel took all of Palestine's land. Free Palestine. Yes. Agreed. Thank you. IDF equals ISIS. IDF equals ISIS. I like it. Hamas created Israel. I don't know about that. Wish more people had your mindset. They will, my friend. They will. The problem is that people don't know the history. Right? People don't know the history, so they see on television the atrocity propaganda. They hear these either hyper-exaggerated or completely fabricated stories about Palestinians hurting civilians, and they hear the media calling them terrorists, and they think, well, I'm against terrorism. I'm against civilians being killed. And then the media completely downplays the crimes of Israel and the Zionist apartheid regime. But even more so than that, they lie by omission by completely omitting the history. They omit the history of the U.S. and British funding the Israeli apartheid state so it could expand and expand and expand and steal more and more land. They ignore the history of the people in Gaza being blockaded into an open-air prison. They ignore the fact that Israel has been taking out one Palestinian child per day on average for the last however many years. Right? They ignore 70 years of history and say, look, the Palestinians are attacking the Israelis. Aren't they terrorists? Look, they have brown skin. They're Arabs. They must be terrorists. They're Muslim. They must be terrorists. That's what the media does. Because they have to isolate in order to lie about these events, they have to isolate them from the factors that created them. Because if you know what created Hamas, and if you know the situation that the people in Gaza have been living in for years and years and years and years, it makes perfect sense that they would want to break out, right? And you would be more sympathetic towards the Palestinian resistance because you realize they're trapped in an open-air prison. What the hell else are they going to do? They've already tried every peaceful form of resistance, and they've been killed by the Israelis every step of the way and suppressed by the Israelis and the U.S. every step of the way. So the media ignores all of those historical factors and just tells you, atrocity propaganda, Hamas, was eating babies and eating the babies' babies, and therefore everything Israel does is justified. Atrocity propaganda plus ignoring the history equals Western media justifying imperialism. That's how it works. TikTok has already threatened to take down this live, and they've threatened to take down both of my TikTok accounts. We're getting way too much traction on here. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel, Midwestern Marx. Please follow us on Instagram at Midwestern Marx, on X/Twitter at Midwestern Marx if you want to keep up to date with us. We do tons of streams, tons of Palestine content on there, unique content, and our TikToks get re-uploaded on there. So to stay up to date, please follow us on there. I do not know how much longer I'm going to last on TikTok, but thank you for being here with us, 1.4 thousand of you. Free Palestine. The people of Gaza are trapped in an open-air prison. Israel is enforcing an apartheid that systematically deprives Arab Palestinians of their basic human rights, both in the occupied West Bank and in Gaza. If Israel were to open up Gaza and to give Palestinians and Arabs basic political rights, the Israeli state would cease to exist because there are more Arab Palestinians than there are Jewish settlers in the region. And the Israeli apartheid state gets over $3 billion a year from the U.S. and tons of weapons contracts from Western weapons manufacturers, which they also make a ton of money off of Israel. The military-industrial complex does, which is why they're also talking about turning Ukraine into a second Israel, but that's neither here nor there. Those are the basic facts of this conflict that people need to understand. They need to understand that this didn't start this week. It's a 70-year-long apartheid backed by the U.S., Britain, and Western oil companies and Western finance capitalists. And they've been killing one Palestinian per day on average for a long time, just indiscriminately firing missiles into Gaza. And even Israel has said, ooh, howdy, y'all. Even Israel has said that the situation in Gaza is unlivable. 97% of the drinking water, or the water, is undrinkable. This is a place with over 1 million children. 44% of the population is children. People usually don't live to be that old in Gaza because the conditions are so bad and the missile strikes from Israel are so regular. And what else is an important fact to know? Also, in 2014, the IDF, Israeli ground forces, went into Gaza. They tried to take out Hamas. And because the Palestinians understood the terrain in Gaza much better, of course, they live there, the urban guerrilla warfare campaigns that they waged against the Israelis were very successful. And the IDF and the Israeli ground forces took over 40 casualties. It was very bad for them. So this is why Israel prefers to not send ground forces in. Instead, they just blockade the Palestinians into Gaza and launch state-of-the-art U.S.-funded missiles at them. Basically indiscriminately, or not, sometimes they explicitly target densely populated civilian areas. And Gaza is one of the most densely populated places on Earth. So now Israel they say they're preparing a ground invasion. They're preparing to enter in on the ground, and then it's going to be very interesting to see how that works, because like I said, they've been scared to for some time now, because the Palestinians are likely to win or heavily harm the Israeli forces in an urban guerrilla warfare situation on the streets of Palestine, where the Palestinians live. They know the streets very well. They know the territory much better. Obviously, I'm not a military analyst, but that obviously gives you a huge upper hand. Also, Israel's been launching missiles at Lebanon for a while and harassing Lebanon, largely at the behest of the U.S., but that has allowed Hezbollah, another anti-Israeli resistance group, to grow in power and continue recruiting more and more people, and they have a lot of military power at this point, and Hezbollah has said if Israel goes into Gaza and tries to occupy it, tries to conquer it, then they will enter Israel and start waging this guerrilla warfare campaign. Syria has said similar things. So Israel is terrified. Like I said earlier, Israel's in this situation where their politics have been shifting right to a more extremist far right, a more extremist hardliner Zionist position. And as they've been doing that and continuing to provoke Arab countries surrounding them, they've turned Arab people against them in the region. So now you have groups like Hamas and Hezbollah, anti-Israeli armed groups, who have gained a lot of prominence and gained a lot of power and gained a lot of recruits. Because think about it, if you're living in Lebanon or Palestine and your brother gets hit by an Israeli missile and you lose your family member, you're very likely to want to join the resistance, to say, I want to get Israel back. That's what's been happening. As Israel has been unaliving one Palestinian child per day in Gaza, their siblings, their relatives have been joining Hamas or have been joining different resistance organizations. So now you have all these Arab militias and even, full-on Arab countries united against Israel and united against the Zionist regime and the apartheid state. And it's a very precarious and dangerous situation for Israel, right? The sort of myth of Israeli military invincibility has been shattered in the last 2 decades. And they are terrified that the Arab peoples in the region are going to unite against them. So it's a very, very, very interesting situation that we're living through here. There are major geopolitical implications to what's going on, to what the Palestinians are doing in Gaza. So, yeah, follow us at Midwestern Marx to stay up to date with it, especially on YouTube. Subscribe to our YouTube, because we're going to get banned on TikTok soon, I promise. For those who don't know, TikTok, the U.S. government forced TikTok to hand over their American servers to a Texas-based company called Oracle with deep ties to U.S. intelligence. And Oracle proceeded to hire a bunch of national security agents and NATO operatives to manage TikTok's American content and American servers. Now, since that's happened, I have had 7 accounts banned. Over 320,000 accounts in total have been banned. TikTok said that these were Russian propagandists or Russian accounts, when mainly they were just like socialist and anti-imperialist accounts. And they've been suppressing our content, threatening to take us down, taking our videos down, demonetizing our videos ever since. Banned 7 of our accounts. So, if you want to stay up to date with us and our coverage of Palestine and other issues, youtube.com/MidwesternMarx, Midwestern Marx on X/Twitter, or Marx Midwest is actually our Twitter handle, and then on Instagram and Rumble and all that stuff as well. They are so desperate to hide the truth. It's insane. It is. And that's something I've been reading. Hold on, let me get the book. I've been reading Michael Parenti's Inventing Reality. And Michael Parenti is one of my favorite academics of all time. But he wrote this book, Inventing Reality, about the Western media in 1993. Right, and a lot has changed since 1993. The internet didn't even exist in 1993. So, back when Parenti wrote this book about the American media, most of it was owned by the big 3 networks, ABC, CBS, and NBC. But since then, with the advent of the internet, we have, what for a while was basically a free exchange of information. And we have all these, independent media outlets who are able to come to prominence using the internet. So that presents a problem that creates a crisis for the ruling class, for the capitalist class, for the imperialists. How do they censor the internet? How do they censor a place where people are supposed to be able to freely exchange information, where people can get the truth out? Well, we're seeing it now. They ban our accounts. They suppress us. They take certain kinds of videos down. They create ministries of misinformation to hunt down misinformation that's actually just people being critical of imperialism. And they ban it. And they just say that they're fighting misinformation. So really what we've seen back then, a lot of the censorship would be self-censorship. The privately owned media apparatuses would censor themselves and push what the U.S. empire and U.S. multinational corporations and the U.S. State Department wanted them to push, and U.S. intelligence. Now, they still do that, and cable media, cable news still does that, but they also have to censor people like me. They also have to censor people like us who are going to get on the internet and start telling the truth. So that's made it much more difficult for them to suppress the truth, but they're hard at work in doing it. All right, y'all. I think I'm going to call it a day for this stream. Thank you so much for being here. Actually, let's get to 200,000 likes. Make sure to like the stream while I'm plugging all our stuff. Thank you all so much. So Midwestern Marx on YouTube, subscribe. Also follow our Rumble in case we get banned on YouTube. Marx Midwest. Oh, howdy. Marx Midwest. All right, we got 200,000 likes. Sweet. Marx Midwest on X/Twitter. Midwestern Marx on Instagram. Midwestern Marx on Facebook. And then my personal Twitter is Ed B. Liger Smith. It just says Liger, and it's like an AI image of my face if you want to follow me there. Constantly tweeting and retweeting stuff about Palestine. Be sure to follow People's Dispatch and Consortium News for good Palestinian content. Breakthrough News is good too. Yeah, that's all I got. Solidarity, everyone. Free Palestine from the river to the sea.